Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, I have to say. I just love graduation. And I love it more than anything because it's such an incredibly special moment. It's a moment that's sometimes even hard to grasp in its significance because it really is the culmination of all the work that you've done. And I want to, obviously, sorry, my hat's too big. Lots of things when you're 4'10" are too big. But first and foremost, and you'll hear it many times this weekend, I just want to congratulate all of the graduates. This really is an incredibly delicious moment to savor all of your accomplishments. And I also just want to acknowledge all of the family, the friends who are here today. I see you, and I don't just see you because you're right in front of me. I mean, I really see all of the sacrifices that you've made to make this moment possible. So I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so honored and delighted to be able to speak with you today. And you know, I had this moment when I was preparing, and I realized that it's actually been 15 years since I was sitting in that seat, waiting to graduate. And quite frankly, in some ways, it feels like a blink of an eye, but actually for me, a lot of things have happened in that 15 years. I got a job, I got tenure. I also got totally, utterly, and completely burned out. I had a massive, ugly midlife crisis, and that's what preceded me leaving my tenured position to start a business in the middle of the recession and against hope that it would work. I'm glad to say that several years later, it's become wildly successful. And while I never imagined it, here I am today as a CEO of a multi-million-dollar business where I get to actually do what I love every single day. And I mention that not to pat myself on the back. I mention it because I really was trying to figure out the best way to serve you in this position today. And to me, the best way I can serve you is by sharing with you, not scholar to scholar, but person to person, I really wish that I knew when I was sitting in that particular seat, the hard lessons that I've learned over the 15 years to really share with you what it was like, that journey from PhD to CEO, a very unexpected journey. Trust me, no one is more shocked than I am. So let me say this. There's really 3 things I want to share with you briefly today. 3 things I do wish I knew. And the first is this. One of the most important things that you can do is get very clear on your definition of success. The second is this idea of the power of playing with possibility on a regular basis. And the third is how to really get the kind of mentoring so that you can be the exception and not the rule. And so let me just say a little bit about each one of these. First and foremost, when I started my career, I'll be totally honest with you, I was socialized into a version of success as an academic, of which there was one way to succeed, and that was to get a tenure-track job at a research-intensive university, get tenure, and develop a reputation as a scholar. And so, you know, I'm an achievement-oriented person, so I set out to achieve that version of success. And it was incredibly hard, not just because it's a hard thing to do, but it was incredibly hard because I was like a round peg trying to fit in a square hole. And if you've ever played with one of those games, you know, if you just smack and hit that peg hard enough, you can get a round peg in a square hole. It doesn't fit very well, but you can jam it in there if you try. And that's sort of what my academic career was like. Constantly trying to force myself into a very specific version of success. And you know, I had some success in doing it, right? I worked very hard, I published a lot, I got cited a lot, I got tenure early, and from all outward appearances, I should have been happy. But in fact, I wasn't, and I wasn't for only one reason, because I was living a version of success that wasn't actually my version of success. And to be even more honest, doing research simply is not my zone of genius. It is something I'm perfectly competent in doing. It's something I greatly admire. It's something that I love sort of engaging in. But it's something that I would put not in my zone of genius, but my zone of competence. And there's a really important difference between the two. Because when I say my zone of genius, I mean those activities which I am perfectly designed to do. Those activities that when I'm doing them, they are effortless. Those activities that when I do them, I am so highly engaged, I lose track of time and space. They're those activities that are me operating literally at my highest potential. And at a certain point in my life, and I really want you to hear me when I say this, we have to realize the difference between activities which are in our zone of competence and those things which are in our zone of genius. Because the most powerful path, the quickest path, is to do those things which I have been and which you are completely gifted at, which you can do not just good, but you can do better than anyone else. And so to me, I had to ask myself, what does it actually mean for me to be successful? Is it the version handed to me by other people? Actually, that's not really doing it for me. In fact, for me to be successful, and I'm very clear today what that means, it means operating in my zone of genius, doing what I love, serving as many people as possible doing it, and having a life. And so I want to encourage you as you move into your next transition, into your next level of work, that you start noticing on a daily basis how much time you're spending in that zone of competence versus how much time you're spending in that zone of genius. And to really, more than anything, start asking yourself, what does it actually mean to me to be successful? And am I moving in that particular direction? The second piece I just want to share with you briefly is this idea of learning to play with possibility. I'm somebody who's a very rational person. I like to oftentimes, to a fault, sort of deal with what's possible. But when I say playing with possibility, I mean developing a habit of thinking, a habit of being as if there were not limits. I'll just say, for me, when I got really clear what I love to do, and here's what I love to do, this is what my zone of genius is. I know how to help people who are really smart get out of their own way and start producing at a very high level. I know how to help people be explosively productive and have a life. If you're stuck at any point, come see me. I know how to get people unstuck very, very quickly. It's a quirky sort of gift, right? But it's a gift nonetheless. It's a gift that when I recognize it, when I live in it, when I exercise it, guess what happens? What I want to know very quickly is how can I serve more people? And so my husband and I have a very simple practice, and I'll recommend it to you. Every single Sunday, we take a very long walk. And we take a very long walk that has one purpose, one designation. We call it crazy talk. And what crazy talk means is that from the minute we leave our house until the minute we get back, we speak only as if there were no limits. We imagine and exercise our imagination in a way to try to really ask, if I were operating at my highest potential, if there were no limits, if I could use my gifts to serve as many people as possible, what would that look like? What would my biggest dream look like times 10? And ultimately, it's a little hard when we get started, but an hour into it, boy, our juices are really flowing. We live in downtown Detroit, so you got to walk fast, right, to make sure nothing happens. So we're just pep stepping around, kind of working on our possibility, thinking about what's possible times 10. It's a wonderful activity I highly recommend. And I recommend it because it didn't happen in one walk, but over a series of moving forward, I started to ask myself, right now I'm just using this gift to help my colleagues, and it's popular and I get a lot of free dinners, but what would it look like if I served more people? What would it look like if it had a structure? What would it look like if I started a mentoring program? What would it look like if I wrote a book about it? What would it look like if I became a columnist for Inside Higher Ed? What would it look like if I actually started my own business? What would it look like if we started to use technology to create the kind of platform and community that could serve not 100 people, but that could serve thousands of people in a meaningful way? And so I just want to encourage you to think about a practice that every single week you step outside of this idea of what's real, of constraint, and allow yourself to just sink into that possibility. And the last point I want to make is this, and maybe this is the most important, especially for a group of researchers, a group of scholars, a group of critical thinkers, and that's this. When you're wanting to make a move, I mean a real leap, a leap of faith to move to the next level. The biggest mistake that I made was approaching my life like I would approach a research project. And what I mean by that is this. I often, when I thought about making a big jump, a next level jump, I would ask myself, I'm a sociologist, what is the probability I'll be successful? This is not a good question to ask when you're starting a business because the probability is low, okay? Most new businesses fail, and most new businesses not only fail, but if you are a woman-owned business and a minority-owned businesses, the challenges are even greater. And so for a couple years, I didn't move. I just thought about it because I was thinking about the overall pattern and the limits of probability. And here's the shift that I made that I want to recommend to you. At a certain point, I asked myself, how can I be the exception and not the rule? How can I find mentors who are the exception and not the rule? And so for me, I took a look at the data and I said, well, if you look at women-owned businesses in the United States that are successful, less than 2% of them generate over $1 million a year of revenue, which is considered a high-functioning business. So when I'm looking for a mentor, I'm looking in that 2% of extraordinarily successful women business owners. I'm looking not only for the successful women, but for the social entrepreneurs, the people who care about change more than they care about profit. And even more, I'm looking for female mentors who have a life. I'm looking for female mentors who pick up their kids at the end of the day of school. I'm looking for female mentors who have long-standing, healthy, thriving marriages. I'm looking for female mentors who have a full life. And when I found those people, guess what? They're the ones who will help me not just learn how to grow a business, which is what I cared about, but also to have a life while I'm doing it. And so I really want you to hear me when I say this. Almost everything that's really good, that's really exciting, is hard to get. But if you're talking to the people who haven't gotten it, that's not the kind of mentoring that's going to help you get it. If you want to truly be the exception, whether it's getting an NIH grant, whether it's publishing your first book with your top press, or whether you're like me, starting a business knowing absolutely nothing about business, whatever it is, you want to find those mentors who are the exception and let them mentor you to be the exception. So let me just wrap up today by saying this, which is my hope for every single one of you graduating today, and that is that you will be very clear, very quickly, what success means to you. Not everybody else, but to you. That you will not only know what that version of success is, but that you'll develop the habit of playing in possibility, and that you will quickly and easily find the kind of mentors that will lead to an exceptional life. Congratulations, enjoy the day, and I hope you can truly savor this moment. Thank you.